Now, it's a great pleasure to introduce Dr. Mario Pinto, and Mario is no stranger to many of you in the room, and certainly no stranger to this conference. And he's stuck with us through thick and thin over the years because, as president of NSERC, he's had to make many strategic decisions about areas of science that will be investable in the coming years in order to build not only great science in Canada, but also great translational science. And I think we've seen since Mario's taken over at NSERC a fantastic revitalization of many of the programs. And we've been so pleased to see the agri-tech and the agricultural sector has also been very well taken care of during Mario's period as president. So I'd like to bring Mario up to the stage. He's going to talk about no food production revolution without a research revolution. Thanks for coming, Mario.
Thank you, Morris, for that generous introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm fighting a cold, so bear with me. Too much traveling, but all on your behalf. Revolution is a powerful word. I think John Lennon said it best. You say you want a revolution. Well, you know, we all want to change the world. When it is evoked, most people will immediately think of political revolutions of the past, perhaps think of Lenin. But some of the most impactful revolutions in history were revolutions sparked by the application and mobilization of remarkable research discoveries. The Green Revolution, of relevance to you here, is a perfect example. Faced with worldwide food shortages, the Green Revolution transformed farming practices by introducing novel agricultural technologies that led to sizable increases in agricultural production. It is well understood that scientific discoveries can and do happen by serendipity, but doing something meaningful with research, that rarely happens by chance. The Green Revolution took the combined efforts of government, big players like the Ford Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, and the ingenuity of individuals. For example, the ingenious research drive of Dr. Norman Borlaug. Here he is seen with his group in Mexico in his efforts to solve the problem of wheat production in Mexico. Dr. Borlaug led the way to initiatives which prevented widespread world hunger, notably in Pakistan and India. He received the Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts in 1970. The legacy that Dr. Borlaug has left behind to scientists such as me is that science is sometimes the most effective conduit to achieve change. I present this truth regularly. Science is a tremendous vessel for diplomacy and relationship building. And as scientists, we must be conscious of our social responsibility to apply science for the greater good. Science cuts across geographical and political boundaries and limitation in what is thought to be possible. Its discoveries can not only lead to improved lives, but as the Green Revolution showed, it can certainly save lives. Unfortunately, almost 60 years after the Green Revolution, we still face the problem of eradicating hunger. And we are facing the prospect of even greater food insecurity in the near future. So where do we go from here? And that's something that preoccupies us as part of the Canadian government, but also as part of social citizens. When governments convened in Rio de Janeiro in 2012 for the UN Conference on Sustainable Development, they developed the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, and they issued a challenge to all of us. SDG 2, no hunger. I would say it's a direct challenge to the communities seated here today, as well as the policymakers. If you accept the challenge of leaving the policy to me and other suits, and you accept the research challenge, I would be very grateful as we go forward. You have the expertise and the drive to propose solutions to policymakers on how to eradicate hunger and address food insecurity in the same way that technologies of the Green Revolution prevented what could have been a world crisis. It is also important to stress that the 17 SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, are also interconnected and are a bold reminder that global challenges do not exist in silos. In fact, this is why I'm so optimistic about the prospects for research around food production and agriculture. If there was any area of science more suited to the kind of convergence and transdisciplinarity that is improving research right now, it is these fields. We heard a recent talk this morning about a physicist working with a botanist. Well, perhaps that's not so out of reach for all of us. So when we talk about hunger, we're not just talking about lack of availability of food sources. We're also talking about SDG 13, climate change. This is the open Northwest Passage, resulting in major changes in the Arctic. There's a wonderful book you should read, and whose title is The Right to be Cold. And it's a very useful message because it's an important message because it changes lifestyle completely. It affects and impacts biodiversity and agricultural food production, SDGs 14 and 15. Sustainable cities. SDG 11 talked about sustainable cities and sustainable communities, so that rural populations also have healthy and sound livelihoods, and cities are not inflicted with urban density challenges, high rates of unemployment, resource scarcity, and urban slums. This links to SDG 8, decent work and economic growth. Asking governments and private sector to support our farmers, not just with subsidies, but with best practices and sustainable technologies to continue production without stresses on the environment. This brings me to SDG 6, clean water and sanitation. Water is perhaps one of the rarest yet most precious resources we have. It's hard to think of it this way, given that water covers 70% of our planet. But when we consider the fact that only 3% of the world's water is fresh water, used for drinking, bathing, and irrigating our farms, it puts things in perspective. This is a terrible time to get a cold. The UN estimates some 1.1 billion people worldwide lack access to water. The International Decade for Action, Water for Sustainable Development, 2018 to 2028, is accordingly calling for attention to water as critical for sustainable development and the eradication of poverty, hunger, food security, and to ensure proper nutrition. We need to acknowledge that with food and water shortages, we are also responsible for food waste, which essentially wastes water used in food production. These are practices that we cannot afford to ignore, given the realities we are facing. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change projections reveal increased density of droughts, which will take place within the next 30 to 50 years. This is a very powerful image. I don't need to expand on the severe impacts this will have on food production with this audience and our societies, but I can certainly promote the value and arguably the necessity to build linkages between research policy, civil society, to start a new revolution. A revolution that will provide solutions to mitigate the adverse effects of climate change so that food security and its multiplier effects is not in global jeopardy. So what does this research revolution look like to me? I think here in Saskatoon, you will immediately see the possibilities of the kind of revolution I'm about to tell you about. You've been very successful at the University of Saskatchewan in recent competitions. The two Canada First Research Excellence Fund successes, the Global Centre for Food Security, world-class research resources, and new investment and mobilization through the Innovation Supercluster. This is due to the work and ingenuity of research champions. It doesn't just happen, and I want to single out Morris here for all these efforts. The government just provides the money, right? But the ideas come from you. Budget 2018, of course, also announced historic new investments in research, a 25% increase in fundamental research. That was unbelievable, and all my dreams came true in a flash. And in the next flash, I asked myself the question, now what do I do? Right? In making these investments, the Government of Canada clearly signaled that it wants research to be done in a way that embraces new approaches and that strives to take advantage of the truly international and multidisciplinary nature of science, including incorporation of indigenous knowledge and perspectives. This is an image from one of the museums in your great province here, reflecting Métis indigenous traditions. And all audience members here will soon become familiar with the new Tri-Council Fund for high-risk, international, interdisciplinary, and rapid response research. It has been supported with over $275 million over 5 years, with $65 million a year ongoing. This fund represents an opportunity and a chance to really think outside the box, and I throw out the challenge to all of you, to think collaboratively in proposing research ideas with major impact for Canada. Our strategies will be guided by the Canada Research Coordinating Committee, shown in this slide. So if I start at the left, extreme left is Ian Stewart, President of the National Research Council. Next to him is Roseanne Runty O'Reilly, President of the Canada Foundation for Innovation. Next is John Nubley, Deputy Minister of Innovation, Science, Economic Development. Next is the chair of the committee, the inaugural chair, Ted Hewitt, President of the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council. Next to him is the champion for science, the Honourable Minister Kirsty Duncan, our Minister of Science. And next to her is our Chief Science Advisor, Mona Nemer, and I'm standing beside her, and on the right-hand end is Rod McInnes, Acting President of the Canadian Institutes for Health Research. So we cover the waterfront here, and we're determined to make a difference. Just before this talk, I was on a conference call, and that was our 8th meeting of the committee to discuss how we're going to move forward, and you'll soon hear our ideas, and we'll ask you in open consultation to tell us what you think about those ideas. But remember that what we're trying to do is cross sectors and to make a difference. Right? We no longer want the silos, and I realize that may be heresy talking to a farm crowd, but we don't want the silos. So personally, I would encourage scalable research solutions that promote interconnectedness of interdisciplinary research, partner participation of all types, NGOs, provincial agencies, municipalities, rural communities, and policy uptake, because that is key. Right? Until you have economic drivers, it's going to be very difficult to change behavior. Somebody mentioned the social aspects in the previous session, which is absolutely key. Because when we talk to farmers, we talk about new technologies, and the first question they ask us is, will this affect my marketability of product, either nationally or internationally? You know we have issues with GMOs or even GE foods. Right? So we have to talk about that, we have to address that. So in my mind, I asked a simple question: are we going to continue to be known as a country of pilot projects? And we are known as a country of pilot projects. Or are we going to focus on bolder research questions and the associated follow-through? And several of you talked about this from Innovate UK. You have to follow through. Right? And I maintain you have to have economic drivers in order to follow through. This is our model at NSERC, and it comes from Robert Dines, the former head of the University of California, who addressed this point directly when he suggested that research and development, R&D, missed a crucial step of creating a broader change. So he added a second D. For delivery, R and D and D. Delivery or application for economic or societal gain, for public good, or to inform policy. I feel this is a valuable concept because it reminds us that doing R&D, while essential, providing the foundation, and certainly of interest to economies seeking to grow, is not enough. The recent report from the Canada Council of Economies showed that we do very well at the front end on research and adding value, the R&D, but we fail miserably as a country in commercializing that potential or in having societal impact. So we have to do better. The innovation superclusters, of which you are a winner, is an attempt to address that gap. In this diagram, I show arrows with two-way flow between discovery and delivery. But the two-way flow is very important, and it signifies that one can enter this ecosystem at any point. And the spark for innovation may derive from a frontier discovery, a global market force, a global challenge, or from a partner's interests. The feedback loops between the three sectors ensure continuous optimization and a productive way forward. And for those of you who've straddled these areas, you know exactly that that's how it works, right? This is no mystery to those of us who've worked both in the research ecosystem and the innovation ecosystem. I think that this concept has direct application to food security and to Canada. And I want to challenge you. So perhaps R&D is like pilot projects. A good start, but not enough when one is dealing with the UN Sustainable Goals. We need a shift in perspective. So I think this model is timely and highly applicable to the topic we are addressing at this important event. From NSERC's perspective, I think there are a variety of tools that can be used to help support this progress, in addition to the strong funding boost given to the Discovery Program. This slide shows my revolutions between discovery, invention, and innovation. Most of us, if we're honest, would admit that we work in the discovery invention space. It's very difficult to turn that into innovation. And so one has to be brutally honest when going forward, and that's exactly what we've done with government in Budget 2018 in defining more clearly the borders and saying this is what we do, and in order to effectively develop innovation, we need another model. And so the innovation superclusters are that experiment. And I emphasize that it's an experiment. So it's up to you to make sure that we get positive results from that experiment. So we're in a very different point in our Canadian research history. We understand the gaps, we understand where we've fallen down badly, and we understand the way forward. Now, can we do it? Time will tell. From NSERC's perspective, again, I think there are a variety of tools that we will supply to you. We're in the process of modernizing, simplifying, and improving our research partnership programs to generate a single partnership architecture, which will involve interdisciplinarity and international dimensions. I want partners to come to me or academics to come to me, and I will ask only one question. What do you want to do? And that's it. And then we will craft an architecture in that partnership program to suit your interests and to deliver. But are we really going to deliver? I think we have to be honest. Most of the time, we'll be adding value to discoveries. And from time to time, there'll be a small bubble there, the innovation bubble. And by working with informed partners with a different set of ground rules, where you have different go, no-go decisions, and my motto when I ran accelerators and incubators was kill it quickly. It may sound brutal, but that's exactly what you have to do. Okay? So let me end my remarks with a call to action. We must be prepared to engage in revolution. We need to be clear on where we want to be 20 years from now. Now is the time to be bold and begin new endeavors and to collectively raise our level of play. I gave up a very rich research career to take this job in government because I really believed that one had to raise the level of play and that one had to educate government about how one should do that and how one should invest in that endeavor at scale. We now have that investment. So now it's up to all of you to raise your level of play, and that's all I ask. That's all I ask. So now is the time to be ingenious, to directly address key global challenges, as I presented with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Very simple challenge. Food and clean water for all, abundant crops, healthy mothers and babies, and a clean planet. How easy is that? You can deliver, right? This, I think, is a vision we can all get behind. So let's think big. Right? With this event today, you are making this possible because dialogue is the key seed that will lead to the building of lattices and connections, interconnectedness. I'm always encouraged to see researchers across disciplines, across borders, come together to focus on positive disruption. And many of you have heard me say many times, science has no borders, just frontiers. I'm presently the chair of the Global Research Council, a collection of 70 granting councils from 70 countries. We just met in Moscow 3 weeks ago to discuss how science diplomacy can transcend this changing geopolitical context that we live in. It's very important if we're going to attack these global challenges. So let's connect the dots. First, across this vast country, this is a non-trivial exercise. And then, let's extend our efforts across the globe. So let's make a difference and let the revolution begin. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. I'd be very pleased to answer questions on any details or any philosophical points you might have. And I apologize for the cold. Thanks.